Listen, so I recently just saw a video talking about how their professor, it was a student saying their professor was failing them because they said they used AI for their paper. And they were like, I can show you all of my notes. I can show you my edit history. Like I wrote this paper. They're like, no, you use the Oxford comma and only AI uses the Oxford comma. Excuse me? As a English major and former English teacher for 12 fucking years, what the fuck are you talking about? Dr. Whoever. You can pry my Oxford comma from my cold, dead hands. In fact, I understand. I understand that you apparently were one of those people that got down with the whole, oh, the Oxford comma isn't necessary thing. But the rest of the world, the sane people in the world, we were like, no. And we kept our Oxford commas. In fact, I still taught the Oxford comma because without it, that's like craziness. Why would you do this? And I don't care if that makes me prescriptive. I'm happy to be prescriptive in this regard because the Oxford comma is necessary. And no, it doesn't mean you're AI. Just like, newsflash, it doesn't have to be AI if you know how to use an M dash. If you had Dr. Pressman at St. Mary's University, you know what an M dash is. You had it burned into your brain. Okay? Enough said. And that was, for me, I'm old, okay? I was in college like 22 years ago, 23 years ago. Yeah. Anyway, at least my bachelor's. Not my master's or my doctorate right now, but my bachelor's degree was like 22 years ago, or give or take. So, the Oxford comma is important. Very important. So we're going to do a little mini lesson right now. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Oxford comma. Okay? One moment, please. So we'll start with this first example. Classic. And I'll say this. Using, and I read this in an article a long time ago, but something along the lines of, and it was worded probably way better than I'm about to state it, but that not using an Oxford comma can cause ambiguity, but using an Oxford comma never will. So there's really like, it's the argument of like, what's the harm in using it? If you've got a problem with it, why? Because it doesn't do anything but make things better. It doesn't ever make a sentence work like bad to have it. But anyway, this is a prime example. I had eggs, toast, and orange juice. We've got 3 things in a list, right? Now, without the Oxford comma there, before the and, we would have, I had eggs, toast, and orange juice. So like toast and orange juice together. So when you have a list, that Oxford comma before the and, make sure to make a distinction that those last 2 items are 2 separate items in the list. Where did this come from? See, I don't know that I remember exactly, but I do know that for a while it turned out that writers wanted to save space. You know, like editors in like magazines or for articles in newspapers and stuff. So not having to use the Oxford comma meant that was, a way to save space. Still, not a good enough excuse. I'm sorry. Like, it's a comma. How much space could you really have saved? I'm just saying. But that's still not my favorite example. And I won't say that I used this in class or anything, but I taught high school. So you have to have and I taught in a time where things were different. You got to have humor, and to get like 9th graders, 10th graders, seniors, to pay attention, to laugh. You got to get them to laugh, find something. Okay. And this right here is literally my favorite example. So here you have it. With the Oxford comma, we invited the strippers JFK, and Stalin. 3 separate things in the list. Without the Oxford comma, and this is so important, this sentence then becomes, we invited the strippers, JFK and Stalin. As that's written, it's telling you that comma there before JFK and Stalin. That would just indicate that who were the strippers? Oh, the strippers were JFK and Stalin. Yeah, love it. So, like I said, you can pry my Oxford comma from my cold, dead hands. And for the professor that is trying to fail their student, or any other professor that's like this, like, do you need a hug? I mean, seriously though. But anyway, yeah, it doesn't mean that you used AI just because you have common fucking sense. And definitely, you should be fighting this with your dean, especially since you have ways to prove that you did not use AI. Because in this advanced technological world, there are definitely ways to prove that, especially if you did track changes or if you have like the history of your editing, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, no. So no, Oxford commas are the shit, and here to stay. And again, that just means you had good teachers. If you actually can use first of all, if you can use a comma correctly in general, you're already doing better than many people in life. Because there's lots of people that like to put commas instead of periods or periods instead of commas. Like it's very. Let me not even get into semicolons, because oh my god, the lesson on semicolons is fun, but like, just don't do it. And this is why I'm going to tell you not to do it. I'm sorry. I know this is not about semicolons, but I brought it up, and my ADD says I have to say it. Guess what? If you don't actually 1000% know how to use a semicolon correctly, and there's only 2 times that you can use a semicolon, just don't do it. Because guess what? You don't actually need to use a semicolon. Periods work just fine. At least when you're talking about 2 very closely related sentences. When you're in complex listing, it's a little bit more complicated. But for the most part, and for most of the things that you guys are doing, that you write, you don't really need to use a semicolon. It's more of a style choice. So just, when in doubt, just don't. Okay? But definitely do use the Oxford comma. Okay? Sexy writers use the Oxford comma. Okay? So that's all, y'all. Anyway, love you.